Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're rejourneying back in time to ancient Rome to uncover some fascinating secrets about one of its most iconic landmarks, the Colosseum. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've seen it in movies, you've seen it in pictures, you might have even been lucky enough to visit it yourself. It's that massive ancient stone arena, right? Well, yes, but what if I told you the Colosseum we see today is just a shadow of its former glorious self? The image you have in your head is probably of this grand, but somewhat rugged, pockmarked stone structure. It looks its age, weathered by nearly 2,000 years of history. But the truth is, it wasn't always like this. The Colosseum you would have seen in its prime, back in the glory days of the Roman Empire, would have been almost unrecognizable. It was a glittering jewel in the heart of Rome, a breathtaking spectacle that shone brightly under the Italian sun. Why? Because it was originally clad, almost entirely in beautiful, pristine marble. Imagine that for a second. Instead of the rough, exposed brick and stone we see now, picture the entire exterior, tier upon tier, covered in gleaming white and colored marble slabs. It would have been an awe-inspiring sight, a true testament to the power, wealth, and engineering genius of the Roman Empire. The sun would have reflected off its surface, making it visible from miles away. It wasn't just a functional arena. It was a monumental piece of art designed to intimidate and impress anyone who laid eyes on it. So, the big question is, what happened to all that marble? Where did it all go? The answer lies in one of the most turbulent periods of Roman history, the fall of the empire. When you look closely at the Colosseum today, you'll see that its entire surface is covered in these strange-looking holes and pockmarks. For years, I just assumed this was normal wear and tear, Erosion, pollution, the general degradation that happens to an ancient building over 2 millennia. But that's not the real story. Those holes are actually the evidence of a great heist, a systematic stripping of the building's grandeur. They are the scars left behind from a time when Rome was in chaos. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, the city was left vulnerable. It was sacked and looted multiple times, and one of the most infamous groups to do so were the Goths. Yes, that's right, the Goths. They, along with others over the centuries, saw the Colosseum not as a priceless historical monument, but as a giant ready-made quarry. They descended upon the city and began the painstaking process of stripping the Colosseum of its valuable materials. All that magnificent marble that once adorned its facade was simply too precious to leave behind. They pried off slab after slab, not just for its beauty, but to be repurposed. The marble was burned to make quicklime for mortar, or it was cut and reused in new buildings, churches, and palaces across Rome and beyond. And those holes we see? Those are the very spots where iron clamps and metal poles once held the heavy marble slabs in place. The looters ripped and tore at the structure, pulling out these iron supports to get to the marble, leaving behind the hollowed-out pockmarks that define the Colosseum's appearance today. It's a dramatic and visible reminder of how fortunes can change, and how even the mightiest symbols of power can be dismantled piece by piece. So the next time you see a picture of the Colosseum, don't just see an old ruin. See the ghost of what it once was. Each hole in the stone is like a small wound, telling a story of loss and transformation. But the story doesn't end there. There's another common misconception about the Colosseum that we need to clear up, and it has to do with its name. We all call it the Colosseum, and we have for centuries. It seems like the most natural name in the world for such a colossal building. But here's the shocker. That wasn't its original name. In fact, the Romans who built it and attended the first games there would have had no idea what you were talking about if you mentioned the Colosseum. Its official name, given to it by the emperors who commissioned it, was the Amphitheatrum Flavium, or in English, the Flavian Amphitheatre. This name might not sound as catchy, but it's historically significant. It was built during the Flavian dynasty, a line of emperors that began with Vespasian. Construction started under his rule around 72 AD and was completed under his son, Titus, in 80 AD. So, naming it the Flavian Amphitheatre was a way of honoring the ruling family, stamping their legacy onto the very fabric of the city. It was a powerful statement, linking their dynasty forever with this incredible public work. For hundreds of years, this was its proper and only name. So, how on earth did it become known as the Colosseum? The answer is just as fascinating and involves a different, even more colossal structure. The name Colosseum actually came about much later, and it was more of a local nickname that just stuck. And it's all because of what stood right next to it. Before the amphitheater was built, the area was part of the extravagant palace of Emperor Nero, the Domus Aurea. As part of his grand complex, Nero had commissioned a gigantic 164-foot-tall bronze statue of himself, crafted in the likeness of the sun god Sol. This statue was known as the Colossus of Nero. It was an immense, towering figure that dominated the landscape. After Nero's fall, the Flavian emperors wanted to erase his legacy and return the land to the people of Rome, so they built their new amphitheater right next to this enormous statue. Over time, as people gave directions or talked about the new arena, they would naturally refer to it by its most obvious landmark. They'd say, "Let's meet at the amphitheater by the Colossus." Eventually, this was shortened. The building became known colloquially as the Colosseo, the Italian word for Colosseum, simply because of its proximity to the Colossus statue. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? The Flavian emperors tried so hard to erase Nero's memory, but his giant statue ended up giving their greatest achievement the name that would define it for eternity. The statue itself is long gone. It was likely melted down for its bronze centuries ago, but its legacy lives on in the name of the world's most famous amphitheater. So, we have a building that wasn't originally called the Colosseum and wasn't originally bare stone. It was the magnificent marble-clad Flavian Amphitheatre, a shining beacon of imperial power that stood next to a giant statue of a despised emperor. Over centuries, it was stripped of its finery, leaving behind the scarred, but still majestic structure we know and love today, and it adopted its famous nickname from a long-lost statue. It just goes to show that with historical landmarks, there's always a deeper, more complex story hiding just beneath the surface, or in this case, hiding behind the missing marble. The history of the Colosseum is a story of glory, destruction, and reinvention, making it even more compelling than just a simple arena for games. It is a living monument to the rise and fall of empires and the incredible resilience of history. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the secrets of the Colosseum. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next historical adventure. Let me know in the comments what other historical mysteries you'd like me to explore. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.